Welcome to the Eric Peoples Leadership Podcast, where I help leaders discover what's possible. Welcome to the Eric Peoples Leadership Podcast, and today I'm so excited. I've got my friends sitting around this table about to have a conversation I know that's going to change your life, not just for now, but forever.
Well, Eric, I'm honored to be around the table today as well. We always talk about this podcast as kind of leadership jet fuel, and we like to inspire leaders to win, focus, and finish strong. And today, we've got some jet fuel around the table. So, Leif and David, thank you for joining us. It's really good to be with you.
It's good to be here.
Give us just a quick bio if somebody's never heard of you before in a sentence or two. David, can you just tell everybody who you are and just a little bit about yourself?
I'm David Wagner, and I live in Franklin, Tennessee with my wife, Molly, and 5 kids, and have a grandson as well, another one on the way. And I get to travel around the world, been able to preach the gospel, share the heart of God in 72 countries.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, my name is Leif Hetland. I live in Atlanta, but I'm originally from Norway. That's why people can hear I have an accent. I've been married to Jennifer for 35 years, and we have 4 grown children, plus, as I'm saying, their spouses, and now 2 grandkids. That's just happened. 1 granddaughter in Norway, grandson here. Have a couple of them. I have a business and 2 nonprofit organizations, and one of them is a global mission awareness, and we're in about 22 countries. And I'm also having the enjoyment of spending about half of my time within the stateside and half of my time travel around the world, and especially in the Muslim world, where I spend a lot of my time and invest. The last 28 years been going into some what people consider the darkest places in the world, since I'm in the light business, and that's one of my businesses.
Awesome. Well, it's good to be with you today, and I know that energy management and thinking about the flow of a leader is super important. And one of the things that we were just talking about is this idea that everybody's fueled by something. Sometimes in business, the idea of pain can be the fuel of, you allow the pain to kind of energize your work, and kind of just to open up this conversation, talking about energy, talking about what it looks like to lead from a place of health. Curious, just kind of, what comes to mind when you think about energy, or even that idea. Eric, what was the phrase that you heard recently of, pain kind of being an energizer?
Yeah, a good friend of my dad. My dad, he's 89 years old. He's kicking it still. But one of the things that he was a professor in a university, and one of his good friends said to me, he meant really well, but he said, let pain be your jet fuel to propel you. And that was one of those things that it caught me off guard, because I thought to myself, I don't think it's pain that I want to actually propel me. I think I want the passion or purpose that drives me and draws me into the next step, as opposed to that pain, because pain just leads us to so many other places that aren't healthy and good.
Curious, what comes to mind?
I was just thinking about a friend quite a few years ago, a friend named Lance Wallner and myself, who were doing this leadership event in Southeast Asia, in Philippines actually, and we were on this island, and one of the people who definitely had pain as a motivator for why he did what he did. And if you're looking at everything from what his net worth was, the youngest president of a bank, and what he owned. And he climbed every ladder you could climb, and he got to the top of it, but he just realized it was not what it was all about. And then you realize we were just spending some time together, and during a session, realized actually he had some major love deficiency. And some of those love deficiencies were fueled him, and he went back to it. Now he's 71 years old. But at the age of 12, he came home and he had 98 on the scorecard. And his dad said, you better get 100 next time. And he didn't realize he's 71 years old and he's still trying to get an A+ in everything that he was doing. But on the inside, he had a black hole in his soul. And when you have pain in your life, you're looking for pleasure. And you find different ways of medicating. And for him, that's, if I can just get success enough, maybe I will hear this voice that says, I love you and I'm proud of you. But he never heard that until this one day when we sat down, and he realized that was the root issue that started the healing in his life at the age of 71, and then into a lot of the relationship that had been hurt, because hurt people hurts people. And that really touched me on a very deep level.
Yeah, I heard this statement recently that if you don't heal what hurt you, you'll bleed on people who never cut you. And I think a lot of times, even in our striving for success or striving to prove ourselves, we're actually bleeding all over, people who sometimes are put into our life to actually help flourish us, to bring us to the next level. And I think a lot of it too comes down to, especially here in America, we don't know how to rest, and we're always striving, and we don't know how to stay filled up. And I think one of the secrets in maintaining our energy is right. It's learning to rest, staying filled up, and not to strive. Just do what you're called to do or supposed to do, and nothing more and nothing less. And so I think a lot of times I think we end up competing with ourself or an idea of ourself because we're looking for that satisfaction of overcoming something we don't really want to deal with.
That's really powerful. I was thinking about just that, the whole idea about, about what is our motivation and what's our driver. And, I just, as I consider the fact, and, it's no surprise for the folks listening to this podcast, me being a person of faith and believing in the goodness of God. I think one of the interesting parts about it is it's if you get good at dodging your disappointment, then it's always somebody else's fault, or it's another thing or another something. I know someone just not too long ago was talking about they've got several homes and several cars, and they're bored out of their minds, and they're just it's the stuff. And then the reality of, sometimes we scratch our heads and go, how did that person actually leave that person for that person? Or, how the bouncing from here to there, or this thing or that thing. I think it's really interesting when you start going down or really digging down to the like to your point of the root. Right. So sometimes we look at we're distracted by the fruit, but we haven't taken the time to actually consider the root of it. And I think that's one of the big things today, considering man, while you're in your car, while you got your earbuds in, while you're shower, wherever it is you're listening to this podcast, today we're gonna go after some of those, like my friend who works for a mining company. They have the dirt to gold ratio, and he goes, you look at this mountain, you're like, man, is it worth the exploration of this mountain? And when they X-ray this big mountain, and I really believe we take the time together in these minutes we have, if you X-ray the mountain, I really believe there's more gold in you than dirt. We've just covered up a lot of stuff with the dirt.
That's good. That's really good. I'm thinking about this idea of father came up, and talking about hearing the voice of your father and even your earthly father. Sometimes that's what you think of, and in kind of in faith communities, sometimes we use that language of my earthly father, my biological father, the man that raised me or didn't raise me, and it's interesting because that's something that seems to be a theme, or it seems to be a secret sauce, an important point of discussion within business communities for those that are influencing and for those that lead people. This idea of fatherhood is important. So I want to kind of let's talk about that for a little bit. What role does that play? What else can we say about fatherhood in the context of leadership?
Well, I think really again that perspective of root, but I think the origin story and what do we relate to, and what are the blind spots that you aren't even aware of. I know for me, one of the most pivotal moments for me in the most recent years was me going on this journey called the Camino, and we actually ended up doing it in California instead of over in Spain and in Portugal like we were going to because of COVID. And I remember just you're supposed to go and just the solitude walk, or I call isolation, but it was like one of these things where, and I remember having this, you're not supposed to have an agenda for the day, but I was like, I've got this idea, I'm going to go with it. And I'll never forget just this, you're supposed to have this prayerful solitude walk, consideration of nature. And I had this idea, I'm like, today I'm just going to kind of think about my family. And I really felt in my heart that, in prayer, that the real statement for me was, no, today we're actually going to deal with you dodging your disappointment. And I got to be honest with you, that was not one of those walks I want to take. I'm like, maybe I should just Uber this through because I don't even know what that means. And I began to think about just taking a walk, considering, this moment I had of solitude. That means I wasn't by myself. I was aware of, the best way to describe it, of the presence of God for my life, which means I'm not alone. I was confident on the inside in this walk. And I began to reflect on the fact that, trying to be there for my kids, specifically for my son, and some things that had been going on. But I thought about my origin story. Like my father was a great athlete. My grandfather never went to, I think he went to maybe one game of my father's. My father's All-American basketball, Hall of Fame in college. And I remember my dad going to, and I played football, did really well, and track as well. And my dad went to 2 games. Well, my father, and I'm not sure, maybe it was, I think my father said to me, I went to 2 games instead of like more than my dad. And for me, I realized that there was the driver. I was all my son's soccer games. I was trying to get there and all these things. And I was just really kicking my own butt during like when I missed one, because I realized like what was super important to me that I felt like my dad didn't get. I was now putting on my son, putting on these moments. And I was just like, instead of it being passion that fueled me, it was pain that was fueling me. And I was like, man, I didn't realize that. And so what ended up what that translated to for me is I just learned I began to learn how to just be with my son, not for an event, but just in life. And that was a lesson that maybe it sounds really dirty in your mind as you're listening. It's like, oh my gosh, could I do that? No, it's just one step at a time. But I really believe that father heart, the heart of God, fathering, and however that seems weird for us, is very important. And our origin story, God has the ability to take an eraser to it and make it, to rewrite the script, if you will.
I grew up without a dad. My dad died when I was 6. And it's the moment that marked me, because you get your last name from your father. They say I have my father's eyes, all of those things. And I remember driving my bike to the cemetery, just trying to connect with somebody who was no longer there. And even like my whole life, I just wanted a dad. And then when I grew up, I wanted to be a dad, but I didn't know how to be a dad. And I had this epiphany moment on January 11th, 2011 at 4:44 in the afternoon. I was in my office in our house working, doing some end of the year things like itinerant people have to do. And two of my sons came in. They said, "Dad, can you go throw the football with us?" I said, "I'm kind of busy, maybe in a little while." And they huffed and puffed and were disappointed, walked away. And I looked at the clock, and it was like the Lord spoke to my heart. He said, "You might as well go. You'll never have this moment again." And so I went out and we started throwing the football. And my son started asking me questions. They said, "Dad, how many times did you throw the football with your dad?" I said, "Never threw the football with my dad." "How many times did you throw the baseball with your dad?" I said, "One time, and I overthrew it, went in the weeds. He threw the glove down. Rained that night, ruined the glove. We never found the ball, and he never played catch with me again." "How many times did your dad take you fishing?" I said, he never took me fishing. And my son, who was about 8 at the time, said, "Dad, thanks for becoming everything you never had but always wanted." And I think as men, we're always wanting something. We're looking for that. We're looking for that approval. And for me, father, that term meant rejection. So correction was rejection to me. Everything I did looked like it felt like abandonment. And you realize the only way you can change that for the next generation is to become what you never had. And it might require making some mistakes along the way. But I found this grace with my 5 kids and now a grandson that we can break these cycles of fatherlessness. We can break these cycles of those things. I think in talking with people in business and different aspects of life, people are either competing for their father's affection or attention. They're trying to prove that they're not like their father, or they're saying, "I'll show him." And it all comes from that place of being unhealed. And if you do that, no matter how successful you are, you'll never have peace. You'll never feel like it's enough, and you'll struggle in your fatherhood, and you'll struggle in your marriage and in your business, because there is this false competition with something and someone you can't see. And it's this root, right? I think I dealt with like a spirit of rejection. Well, you can get free from that. And then there's the root of rejection, and that continually bears fruit in my life if I'm not tending that garden or that tree of my life, in a sense, because it's really easy to go to that and I'll put my best foot forward so you don't reject me. But then there's being rejected, and that's the fear of being great. I mean, that's the result of being great, right? Because If I do something great, I'm giving people an opportunity to reject me. If I'm actually who I am, it gives people an opportunity to reject me. And once you get free from that, I'm telling you, there's a whole new level of breakthrough and peace and grace that comes on your life. That's really powerful.
I was just thinking about a story when I was in the Philippines, and I was actually speaking at this large leadership gathering, and suddenly I got more and more, hey, the president is actually coming, and there's going to actually the head of the bank system. It was like the more, and I felt all of this pressure, and I still remember the feeling. And then I had a dream before I went into Manila, and they were driving me to speak in this event, but in the dream I was playing basketball, and I don't know, I'm a Norwegian, I don't know anything about basketball, and the dream was very vivid where this team with black shirt, black socks, black shoes, everything was black. And I knew what it represented. They were big players, and they were very intimidating, looked like these 7-footers. And my team was like an international team, and there was a large audience, TV cameras, and there was all this pressure. And the score was 89-87. And a little thing that I understood about basketball was that you need to shoot outside a line to be a three-pointer. And I knew we needed a three-point to win, and the clock was some 20-some seconds left, and it was ticking. And everybody was this tension, and the ball was thrown to me, and I can just feel this pressure. Am I going to be able to score or not score? So I had this whole enemy's team against me. I had our team as, oh, score, score. They had an audience watching, and this is going to be a tipping point. And the world was watching through the camera. That was in my dream, and I just could feel this. As the ball was thrown to me, this guy stood up on the audience. Hey, hey. And I can, almost like a Santa Claus looking, I can see his face in my dream. He's like, that's my son, Leif. Woo, that's my son. And I remember I looked at him, and he looked at me. And at that moment, it was something that shifted. It does not matter if I score or do not score. It matters that my Father is well pleased with me. Boom. And everybody in America was like, hey, did you score or not score? The rest of the world could care less when I tell that story. But I was resting at that moment. I threw the ball, and yes, we did score, but I didn't get my value. Everybody was shouting in our team, and everyone was so excited. But my excitement was, but it did something for me. I had a lot of insecurity, and I realized the security of just knowing that my Father was well pleased with me, not how well I played, but simply I was able to be out there playing ball and having risk. So security, love, I felt love, valued, I knew I had a value and purpose, as well as there was an affirmation in it. And then I just felt, why are you playing from pressure when you can play from pleasure? And you're going to score twice as much in life if you just know the Father's pleasure. And that was a kind of a marking point in regard to a lot of my life, my story, my journey of so much being an achiever and feeling the pressure every single time. Am I going to score or not score? Is this going to work? Constantly living with that pressure. But that is a reminder when I get back to that place, first getting that look. But a lot of people don't have a healthy Father. Some of us in faith have a heavenly Father. And that's what this represented for me, that the one that made me, that is my heavenly Father, that for me as a believer is that Jesus came to show me how he is like. I realized I've been running away from that God because I didn't trust him. I actually didn't like him. He seems to be bipolar in nature, the God that I knew. But now I realize, no, he's actually a loving Father that believes in me, and actually the best that I can do is eventually capture that look and knowing that before I do anything, and that's what Jesus came to show me. Before Jesus did anything, he got that look from his Father. This is my beloved Son, whom I love and whom I am well pleased. That was kind of the starting point for everything he did from that place. And if every business owner and every entrepreneur and whoever you're out there, including myself, if we could have that as a starting point, I think that our marriages, our kids, our communities, our staff situation will look very differently. But it became a marking point, and I have to go back again there again and again when again I do feel this pressure. Is this going to work or not work? Then leaning back and just getting that look and be able to be fathered well by the God that actually created it all. Knowing that he was for me and he was not against me. And I don't have to do anything to get his approval. I already have his approval.
That's beautiful. I was just thinking, I remember later on, I had to be, oh my gosh, my late 40s, when my dad told me that he said, your grandfather used to say, you're my racehorse, but you never come in. And I didn't understand what that meant. It meant that he was that he was counting on him. It's like, and that's, I guess, when you're betting on horses, that he would bet on him, but he didn't win. And my dad had so many accolades. I mean, he was president this and all the things. And I was like, how is that possible? Like, how did he say that to you with all that you're doing? And my dad said, well, it was because he grew up on a farm, had to leave school early to take care of his family. My grandfather was the youngest of 24. I thought it was 21. I just found it was 24. So that's still crazy. And farmers. And my dad said, well, I didn't want to lay any pressure on you, so I just didn't say anything. And so there was that vacuum of affirmation. And so then probably around 25 years old, 26 years old, my dad started saying things like, well, I love you, or he'd say, I'm proud of you. And the challenge for me was I didn't believe him because I hadn't heard it. And I'm like, why is he saying that? Because before that, everything that I was doing was for affirmation. I played sports, but track, you break the tape, you get the medal, you do there's all these, it's like immediate satisfaction or affirmation. And I realized like there's things in life where we go through and sometimes reflecting. Maybe some of reflecting now is if you've heard these stories and well, I didn't have this or I didn't have that, and I really think it's beautiful, David, where you were saying like, hey, we just because of what was in our rearview mirror, we don't have to live from that place. We literally have an opportunity to change that. And I just as I think about with my son and my daughter, just the opportunity, even with others, being able to say, hey, like, hey, I love you or appreciate you, or it costs me. It doesn't cost me anything to honor someone, the beauty in someone, to be a blessing. And I think that's one of the amazing parts that we, getting perspective on the value and the opportunity we have to make a difference in someone's life, to change their perspective, and I don't even know, right the wrong, but maybe even like, bring you up to speed, educate, like change the mindset that somehow we have to live in this perpetual cycle of victimhood, as opposed to, wait, now that I know, what am I going to do with it?
We could talk about fatherhood for an entire hour and just never stop. Like there's so much to explore. One of the underlying things that came up, a topic that I'd like to transition to, is this idea of rest. And there is something that when you are kind of operating out of the pleasure of the Father, and when you're operating out of a place of health, having the right replenishment cycles in place and having the right rest in your life can really be a powerful thing. But of course, in the world of business and the world of entrepreneurship, you can give 100% and you still haven't given enough. You can work all the hours in the day and still feel like there's still so much to do, and it never ends and it never stops. And it's not like when you're employed by someone that you clock out and your job is done. Like the life of a business owner and an entrepreneur and a leader is one where their mind is always cycling, always thinking, always working on the next thing, trying to see what others can't see. And rest can really be a challenge. So curious about this idea of rest being a competitive edge, rest being something that can be a powerful weapon, or even a tool in the business owner's toolkit to lead to, growth and all those things. But kind of curious what, being honest, rest is hard for me. And before we were recording, you both shared rest can be difficult for you as well, because there's that similar, your brain can just kind of be on at all times. And if you're thinking, sometimes you're working because you're planning and all of that. So acknowledging the fact that rest is hard, and even as a business owner, rest can kind of sound like, why would I do that? I'll rest later. I'll rest when I'm dead. Like I can sleep later. What does it look like to begin taking steps towards more rest, having replenishment cycles in place, and that being something that can be in service to a leader's influence?
I think we have to realize we're human beings, not human doings. And I think a lot of times our identity or our idea of success is caught up in all that we do. But if you're, I know this in my own life, I'm sure it's true for many people. When I'm tired is when I make mistakes. When I'm tired, it's when I make bad decisions. And so if I'm not resting, I'm not restoring, which means that things that I'm doing or think I'm accomplishing are the things I have to go back and redo. And I don't think we take care of ourselves. I think we treat ourselves like machines sometimes. And I think especially for us, like we were meant to conquer things and to build things and to provide for our families and all of that. So it's really easy to just kind of be driven to go there. But I realize that I can't give what I don't have. And if I'm running how my wife drives our vehicle, which is with the yellow light on, no matter if I'm going a day or a week, like, and I'll say how many miles to empty, because I don't know how long I've been on, a couple days. Like, so I don't know if I have enough to get to the gas tank. And I think sometimes we live life like that. It's because we stop doing things that we enjoy. Like last night, Leif and I were visiting, and he said, "What are some of the things you like to do? Have you been fishing? Have you been hunting? Have you been?" And I said, "I didn't go. I haven't gone fishing in a year and a half. I hunted a couple times last year for pheasants, but I really haven't done anything." And I realized there's a big part of my problem, because I'm not taking time to energize, and I can't give what I don't have. And I'm also missing out on the opportunity of connecting with people and family relationally. So I think rest isn't always inactivity. It's just doing some things you really love to do to recharge the batteries. And I think there's people listening as well that you need restoration. You need restoration in your body, in your mind, in your heart, in your marriage, in your relationships. And restoration begins with rest. And so once you take that place to rest and begin to detox from all of the busy, I think busy is the biggest counterfeit to vision as well. So I feel like I'm doing things. I'm not big into marathons, but I would rather run 26.1 miles and have the scenery change than be 0.1 miles on or 0.2 miles on a treadmill where I haven't gone anywhere. And I think a lot of times we're burning energy, but we're not being productive. And so I think rest is the beginning of that. I'll say this in all honesty. I was in Australia in 2014. I was doing youth events and young adult events, and I like being at everything. So I was going to all of the activities and all of the zip lines and all of the competitions. And I was at lunch one day, and in the middle of this, I think I was speaking like 30 times in 10 days or something. And I was like in the day 7 of it. And I felt this check in my heart, and the voice who I knew was the Lord say, "Hey, you can't run at this pace." Sent me to my room, and so I went to my room and I got my Bible out because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And then he said, "Close that." He said, so I thought I'd get some things out to write. He said, "Don't write anything." I turned on music. He said, "Don't do that." And I sat there. It was the most difficult hour of my life because I didn't like me. I was left with me in that moment in the quiet, and something, call it detox, call it deliverance, that took place, where now I practice an hour of solitude a day, and if I don't do that, I can tell the difference in my business things, in my ministry things, in my relational things, and I realize if you don't take time to rest, you'll enter into a forced rest somewhere. It might come in a heart condition. It might come because of your back or your knees or those things, because you're not a machine. I think the word for the hour is recalibration. Like there's a reason why we change our oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles or 3 months. There's a reason why you need a tune-up in your car, because if you don't keep it in tune and timing chains and oil things, you're going to blow the thing up. And so I would encourage people to put rest in your schedule. If you can't give an hour, start with 15 minutes of just being quiet and letting the one who loves you love you. And that's what I'd suggest.
Yeah, I was also just thinking about that. Why is it such a war against rest? So I've just seen that every single time that I plan a time for just solitude or rest or recharge, something happened, and I can even say supernatural, just seems to interrupt that. I think one of my fun moments, I call it PTSD, post-traumatic squall disorder. And I'm going to go out resting, and my wife said, "Why don't you just sit there and do nothing?" No, I have this electric bicycle. I'm going to go out and try that. 35 miles an hour, I'm going down the golf cart roads in Peachtree City, and a squall, demonized squall, is running across, hit my spokes, I fly, end up in the hospital, and busted my elbow, my neck, and everything else. And then for the next month, because I didn't listen to my wife, I'm putting that as a little school, post-traumatic school disorder, so I'm nervous when I see a school. But it's interesting. It was the time when I scheduled to rest. I could just look at the year and I can realize there was about a dozen times I planned rest and something came in to try to interrupt. That tells me a little bit about the value of it. So I know there's an incredible value when I'm resting because I'm also receiving, I'm renewing, refreshing. Second thing that I think that if we at least that has a tendency wanted to be high achievers, or if we don't see that there is more productivity to live from rest than towards rest, we are not going to valuing it. If I know that if I take, as you say, here's a tree it takes 10 hours with an axe to cut it down, and I'm supposed to get 1,000. If I don't realizing that if I spend, it takes 10 hours to chop down the tree, but what if I took 2 hours to sharpen the axe? And then with a super sharp axe, I used 2 hours to chop down the same tree. I had 6 hours left over. It would be very easy for me to see what I would do. So with a sharp mind, with a sharp body, when the relationship is healthy, when you have taken care of those different things, we use much less and we accomplish more. So it would be easy if we say you can double the horsepower but use half as much fuel. It's not difficult for any one of us in leadership to double the horsepower, but how do you do it with less fuel? And that's when we're talking about the thing we are talking about now, rest. And what do I do to sharpen? What dulls me? What is my gainer and my drainer in my emotional tank? Because when that gets low, in the next moment, we start actually to burn more. And sooner or later, we're no longer burning oil, we burn flesh, and it doesn't smell the same way. We can just ask our wives about it and the people that love us about it. So.
That's so good, because this is circle I've learned, and it's two things for me. It's the season I'm in and the circles I have. When I shift, the circles I have, those are people who actually are aware of the necessity for the rest, for solitude. It forces me to reflect on the present state of being. Like, where am I? Like, it's as opposed to, I think about the green rooms where it's like, well, I've been here, there, everywhere, and here and there and everywhere. And it's like, well, I'll ask the question. Now I'll ask the question, what did you enjoy most? Or where'd you have your favorite meal at? Or what was a favorite thing you did? I went to this great, great hotel, and there's sommelier, and we hung out, and blah, blah. Okay, great. So I'm hearing that. Or, I don't have time to rest. And I'm realizing more and more that for me, it's a mind shift, because there's a couple things. You don't ever get the time back. And I've been around, I've sat by deathbeds, I've talked to a lot of people, and they've never said, I wish I had more, I wish I had a bigger, faster car. No, it's always more time. Mm. And I just, reflecting on that, I'm like, I've said, you can make more money, but you can't make more time. And what matters most, and I really believe in seasons, it's, I say, what's the win? What's important now? Like, what's important right now? And, one of the things I've been really working hard on is I'll say, I've said this way, the gift of presence. And so I'm, just a month or so ago, my son asked me, hey, are you Dad, you going to join the golf club course to this club? They have the season passes. And I was like, well, I'm not sure. And I realized, wait a second. He wasn't really asking me. He was testing to see if I would make room for. I'm hearing things differently now from a mindset of rest, and I'm going, okay, wait, I don't get this time back. You're talking to me about playing golf, and you're going to make. And so I realize now, okay, wait a second, I'm not on repeat from what I've learned, what I've had modeled. I'm now knowing what I know now, I've got to do differently, and so I think that. Those circles, for sure, relational circles matter. As I sit here listening to you all, I'm saying, man, my friends are talking about being grandparents. Well, I'm not a grandparent. My first is getting married soon. But I'm literally thinking, wow, with my reflection of my grandfather, I did errands with him. We didn't sit and talk about anything. I would try and come and show up and talk with him at times, but it wasn't dialogue. It was, I'm going to tell you, it's sit under your knee and wait and listen, as opposed to, well, what's your heart saying? And I'm learning a different way of being. And I think also, too, what am I actually enjoying in the season am I in? What am I enjoying? The shocker of, and I'll kind of say this, also the sacrificial part of love and rest. Being with my wife on our 20th anniversary, this is some time ago because we just celebrated 34 years, but We went for a week on a. She loves the ocean. We're sitting by the beach. I rented a cabana every day, and so I'm sitting there and I have like 5 books in my iPad, and I have a voracious appetite for reading, so I'm blasting through books. I got 5 books. So I'm reading almost a book a day. And day 3, she's like, "Isn't this amazing? This vacation, this is so great. We're just here sitting by at the ocean." And I'm literally looking at just 5 minutes prior, I'm looking at the Wave Runner Ski-Doo rentals, and I'm thinking, I wonder how long it would take me to ride this to Cuba. I was like, I'm sitting here sedentary, dying, but I realized, she was like, it was the 3rd day. She's like, "This is the best vacation ever. We're just here and hanging out." So I file that. And every time we go away, I just set my heart that this is a time for us to be together and to hang. No agenda, no jamming a little golf thing in there. It's like, hey, we're just going to hang. And there's times where she might go, "Oh, why don't you go play golf or hang out?" But I didn't learn it, hadn't seen it modeled, hadn't read in the book anywhere. And so I think these learnings we have where we're like, okay, so me being rested, like what my professor said to me, he goes, ask the question when you're tired, or ask the question for people when you're not sure. How are you experiencing me right now? And so I'm learning, like, when I'm exhausted, everyone lets me know. My son's like, "Dad, you shouldn't go to this place because you going scuba diving while you're tired is just going to be ridiculous. Don't do it." I'm like, "I need some adventure." "No, you need some rest." So that's again circles, but I'm just learning.
And any thoughts before we sign off?
This has been awesome. I really believe that there's people that are listening to this podcast that are going to have some deep and different considerations, because most cases, the highlight reel is always what people experience the podcast, and that's been my heart to say, no, you get actually the real, not just REEL, but the real element of living. Because if there's any part of this that you get and you're like, this is going to be a pivot point for me, then you've probably added value downline, the ripple effect in your business and your family and your friendships. And so, no, I just really appreciate the wisdom. Thanks for paying the price for listener.
I think it's important that people listening today, watching today, realize that it's not too late. So just because somebody did it wrong doesn't mean that you have to make those same mistakes or live in those same cycles. And I feel like those cycles of defeat or fatherlessness or parentlessness, if you will, can be broken, and you can start anew. Like I've said, with things that happened in my own father's life, and I can go back generations of addiction or abuse or torment, like that stops with me. It was their story. It was my story to a certain point. But I can break that off, and my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren won't ever have to know that. And so there's some people listening today that it's a real season of choosing to let go. Forgiveness is a choice, and so is moving on. And some of you, your success may be connected to you forgiving your father for him not knowing what he didn't know. It may be realizing that he, like Eric was talking about, his dad went to 2 games because he was going to double what his father did for him. But we can break that off and actually start something new. And sometimes in our world we talk a lot about generational curses. The Bible says that curses are 3 and 4 generations, but blessings are to 1,000. So what if you're the one today watching or listening, or that you make up your mind that I'm going to begin to invoke, I'm going to begin to initiate 1,000 generation blessing. I can't change what happened to me or what didn't happen for me, but I can't let that mark me for the rest of my life or to be passed on. And so I just want to throw out that as thought for the moment.
I was just also, the picture that came to mind is just an orange, and that sounds very strange. There's no orange here, and people maybe have an orange drink, but the picture was that back in the days in the 1700s, all these sailors who died, and they realized there was this disease called scurvy, and people were dying left and right on the way over. And they found out, the scientists, that if they had only had some oranges or some vitamin C, that they would have saved their life. And I think that there's something that I see you noticing, starting to take your eyes, stop for a moment and look at people with the eyes, vitamin C. And first of all, one of the things for me is that the very story I told, that God sees me, but it's also for me to be present. That when I'm there was a lot of times, and I still don't have much time at home and just finish a lot of different projects and I travel, but I like what I'm here now doing the podcast, I'm 100% here and I see you, or the one person in the front of you, or the one in the grocery store, or the one, so whoever you are with, just learning. It's amazing what a vitamin C, the difference can be. And the last story that came to my mind here, we were in Erie, Pennsylvania some years ago, and there was one person, I just noticed the person, and I didn't wrote, but that person was about to take suicide and had actually just been rejected again. And in that, she was the last one in the line, and I just went over, I just want you to dance with me. I've never done it before, but it was just an idea I had. I noticed her, felt there was something, and at that moment she just broke into tears because of a wound and a rejection she experienced in love that brought a healing. And later on I got to hear the story, what she went through. But just, it doesn't take a whole lot of vitamin C to start to save lives, to start to notice people, stop for a moment to take a look people in the eyes, especially the ones that you love. And it's amazing what healing therapy that can do for people, including allowing God to give his eyes and look at you as his beloved children. I'm learning that when I'm looking at my little granddaughter and my grandson in this season, is just to look at them and then look at you. Something is taking place in that place, and that's also connected to the hard work of rest.
Wow. That was jet fuel for sure, people.